Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It is a weekly roundup of some of the big stories making headlines in the tech industry, and maybe one or two you might have missed. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. On the show this week, Elon Musk's SpaceX is battling California regulators in court. Publishers continue to grapple with AI crawlers scraping their data, and venture capital dollars are flowing in a big way to generative AI. To discuss all this, I'm joined by our regular contributor, Jewel Burke-Solomon from Collab Capital. Hey, Jewel.
Hey, Megan. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. So, as always, we're going to start off with our bite of the week. This is a number that gives us some insight into our top stories. So, Jewel, what is your bite of the week?
The bite of the week is 50. And that is the number of rockets that Elon Musk requested to launch from California's coast. And that request was denied by the California Coastal Commission. So he sued.
All right, we are going to get into some of the controversy going on with SpaceX. But first, let's just talk about the wonder that is going on with SpaceX. So I brought a number and mine is 232, as in the 232-foot tall rocket booster that SpaceX was able to successfully retrieve mid-air for the first time this past Sunday. Let's take a look at the video.
We can see those chopsticks now in the air.
Honestly, spectacular. Every time I see it. This was the fifth test launch of SpaceX's Starship rocket system. The first time that they were able to, to land the super heavy booster after the Starship rocket launch in these kinds of, thread the needle into these two little chopstick arms on the tower. I mean, surely we can all look upon this amazing engineering feat with just unadulterated wonder and pride in this American company that has, unlocked this achievement. But oh, wait, the company is owned by Elon Musk. So
that complicates things a bit, doesn't it?
I mean, I would argue that it should not complicate the wonder and pride in this achievement, but, he is every day an ever increasingly polarizing figure, right?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, I think that's many of us, we see that video, we hear about the real science behind what's going on, and we can't help but be excited about it. But at the same time, the person who's leading this effort is spewing vitriol on X and, coming out very aggressively for one of the presidential candidates, in a way that can be offensive to some. So it is hard to separate the man from this achievement, but it's very interesting to see the discourse back and forth nonetheless.
Right. So you noted the 50 up to 50 rocket launches that were denied by the California Coastal Commission last week. This week, Elon Musk and SpaceX has sued the California Coastal Commission for this decision, which they said was biased against Elon Musk and violating his First Amendment rights, because the commission in its kind of meeting had talked about how Musk was inserting himself into the presidential race, spreading falsehoods about hurricane relief efforts, making other inflammatory comments on his social media platform. I think a reasonable person could probably look at this and say, what do Elon's tweets have to do with protecting the California coastline, which is, of course, the purview of the Coastal Commission? That decision is going to be in the courts to decide. But I mean, I think what is striking about this is how it just continues to highlight this tension with Musk becoming such a polarizing public figure and kind of what that means for his enterprises.
Sure, and particularly what it means for government, um, one could say interference or support for his
Yeah,
enterprises. It's interesting because on one hand, SpaceX has gotten a ton of government subsidy and
right.
support in the $15 billion or more is what the government has backed. How much the government has backed SpaceX, and so you know Elon is certainly influential from that standpoint in terms of the amount of support that the government has put behind his companies. And then on the other side, we have obviously what's been happening as far as his participation in the current presidential race, his backing of, I think it's something to the order of $75 million for former President Trump. And so, all of this is intertangled. And the commission, they had the comment to say that, there's a lot of dialogue that goes on in these meetings. Everything obviously is not pertinent to the vote. But, that's obviously now going to be for the courts to decide if they had bias when they were making that vote, which turned out 6-4 in favor of not allowing that increase to 50 rocket launches.
Right. It's my understanding that the California Coastal Commission's vote may not entirely be binding on whether those launches happen, but definitely something we're going to keep an eye on. Now, on to a different legal dispute that is brewing between the New York Times and the AI company Perplexity, which is backed by Jeff Bezos and Amazon. This week, it was reported that the New York Times sent a cease and desist letter to Perplexity telling the startup to stop using the publisher's journalism without a license. Of course, the New York Times has also sued the maker of ChatGPT, OpenAI, over what it alleges was unauthorized use of its material to train its model. Jewel, explain, what are the stakes here? Why do they seem to be so high for publishers when it comes to AI?
The stakes are extremely high when you think about how folks are using AI, whether it be Perplexity or OpenAI or Claude or some of these other models that are available. People are typing in their questions and getting a quick response. And although in Perplexity's case, they do cite sources, folks are not really clicking through to read those full articles. And so that calls into question New York Times and other publications' business model if people are just going to these companies to get the quick summary of the questions that they have that they want answers to, and not going to these publisher sites anymore. And so that is a huge problem for New York Times and other publishers. And we've seen lawsuits come up in the past, and I think we'll continue to see them. So it's really interesting what's happening in this space.
On the other hand, there are a number of publishers, news organizations that have made deals with these AI companies, especially OpenAI. And there was some reporting in Wired last week about, kind of the decrease in coding requests for OpenAI's crawlers not to crawl news organizations. I mean, why would some news organizations be wanting to make deals with companies like OpenAI?
Yeah, I think a lot of news organizations understand that the future is here and AI is here to stay. And if they want to have durable business models, they have to figure out ways to work with these AI companies. This is actually a space that I've been watching really closely because we have a portfolio company, Nickel Pass, that really plays this kind of intermediary role to help enterprises get relationships with publishers at scale and essentially create a fast pass for folks to be able to, throughout the web, see these different publications to do their work. And so a company like that could partner with the AI companies and the publishers and sort of play that middle role. And so we're excited about what's to come and what opportunities are going to show up because of this change in the market. But going back to your original question, I think that the publishers that want to be around for the long haul are going to have to figure out how they can play nicely with the AI companies, as we've seen, and we'll talk about, so much money going into AI. It's just where we are today. And if these publishers want to stay alive, they're going to have to figure out how to work with the AI companies.
All right, let's talk about that. All the money that is going into AI. This is in your world, the venture capital world. We got some new data from CB Insights showing that the last 2 quarters have seen a record share of investment going to the AI sector, about a third of all VC dollars. Honestly, I'm going to say I was a little surprised that it wasn't higher,
More,
just looking
yeah.
at the landscape. Yeah. I mean, how have you been feeling this in your work?
Absolutely. You're right. I would say that how we think about it is at this point, all companies that we're seeing as far as that are pitching us have, dot AI or trying to showcase themselves as AI companies. So I'm actually a little surprised that the number isn't larger just because there are so many companies that are, positioning themselves that way. But I think it makes sense for what's happening in the market. Everyone, in the same way that when cloud was the shift or mobile was the shift, all dollars were kind of rushing in. I think we're seeing that for AI. It's going to be really interesting to see which players emerge as the real winners. And also, it's going to be interesting to see if early startups are going to be able to compete against these huge players like OpenAI, like Superintelligence, who have gotten these massive funding rounds over the last few months and over the last year. So it's a lot happening in the space. But interestingly, if you take AI out of it, still venture dollar allocation is down from what we've seen in past years. And so it's really kind of a tale of two of two markets, if you will, between what's happening with AI startups and what's happening with startups that are not positioning themselves as AI startups.
I keep hearing this over and over from people in different, parts of the tech industry that it is just a tale of two markets, as you say. There's the AI boom and there's the rest of tech.
Yep.
Obviously, generative AI has been super hot, but quickly, are there particular kind of subsectors in AI that have been especially interesting to you?
I'm super interested in safety. I think for all of what we're seeing as far as the innovation, there simply aren't enough guardrails. And I'm looking at companies that are worried and concerned with our cybersecurity, our data, trust, and safety. Those are, for me, what's been most interesting to see. So I'm excited for those companies that are really paying attention to what all of us humans need to stay safe in this AI rush and building for that future.
All right, Jewel Berg-Solomon at Collab Capital. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Jesus Alvarado produced this episode. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This is APM.